Hi, I'm TODD YEARY, Senior Vice President of the Rainbow Push Coalition, here to give you an update on this week's status of the coronavirus relief packages as have been appropriated by the United States Congress under the CARES Act. As you will recall, the CARES Act provided for necessary funding in the way of small business loans that would eventually become grants that would allow small business owners, faith-based institutions, nonprofits, and independent contractors to be able to ensure that their employees and their businesses would remain viable during this period of economic disruption. This past week, we continued to provide technical assistance for persons working to prepare applications for submission to the Paycheck Protection Program, as well as facilitating ongoing conversations with the administration concerning difficulties that were experienced during this process. As of the time of this recording, the funds appropriated in round 2 have not been completely exhausted. So as a result, we continue to provide educational support, technical assistance, and facilitation of conversations between applicants and potential lenders to make sure that we are able to service as many small businesses as we possibly can during the course of this Phase 2 funding. However, this week there was a release of a proposal for what we will call CARES Act version 4.0 that includes significant and substantial provisions for a number of areas that up to this point had not been adequately addressed. We recognize that issues such as stabilizing access to food, making sure that there are provisions for higher education, addressing concerns like access for underserved communities, and making sure that state and local governments are made whole and not left vulnerable to unnecessary cuts due to the inability of the federal government to provide necessary relief to state budgets and local budgets. We continue to review and to understand the reach, the depth, and the intent of the proposed legislation as submitted by the House of Representatives, and we will continue to reach out to members of the House and members of the Senate to ensure that there is no undue delay in taking up this important legislation and ensuring that the whole of government approach that is advanced by the administration reaches the whole of America and leaves everyone in a position to recover from the effects of this pandemic. We recognize that under CARES Act 2, there were provisions for additional funding for healthcare facilities, but also for testing. And so we continue to monitor the reach of testing as part of our due diligence as we are reviewing the state's various plans for opening up business and government over the next several weeks. It is our belief that we should not reopen government until we have a sufficient baseline of testing in underserved and under-resourced communities to make sure that the curve that we often hear about is reflective of the curve that is in the communities and reflects the conditions of the people most at risk to the harm from this virus. We will continue during the course of this week to not only monitor existing legislation, but also propose legislation and have necessary and essential conversations with members of local, state, and federal government to make sure that we do our part in advocating for the policies that will protect not just a community, but all communities. And so we remain committed, invested, and working toward taking care of this issue and trying to make sure that we continue to do what the Rainbow Push Coalition stands for, and that's fighting for equity across the board, economic, political, and resource equity, especially in a time of heightened risk from a global pandemic. If you need more information, go to rainbowpush.org, or if you need to make us aware of any situation that is affecting you, you can just reach out on the World Wide Web, rpccovid19.com. Again, rpccovid19.com. Until next week, we'll be reading the 1,815 pages of proposed legislation to make sure that we understand what the Congress is proposing and ensuring that what they intend to do is what ultimately we experience. In the meantime, in the words of Reverend Jackson, keep hope alive.